Now, this is a very, very important session. So firstly, I will introduce the speakers as they come up. But let me first say why I was asked to moderate this panel. It's not because I have the power to keep people quiet. It's because somebody downstairs, when I told them what I do, they said, "So you are a fixer?" And I said, "Precisely, that's what I do." This is my former premier from KZN. So he was once praising me in his parliament in his State of the Province address for the very reason that I'm a fixer. Not that I was helping him fix anything in the province, but I mediate in civil wars across the world. That's what I do. So all these civil wars that you see in Africa today, Sudan, Somalia, Burundi, the DRC, Sierra Leone, Liberia, these are things that I do, Minister. I told the minister I first came to his country in 1979, not because they were having a civil war, but because we were having a civil war. And that's why I went there. So that's what I do. And civil wars are generated a lot of the time because we don't have resilient communities. And this is the challenge. So I'm going to set the scene for you about why we need resilient communities and why we need to invest in social infrastructure. And what will happen? What are the consequences if we don't invest in social infrastructure? So let's just look at our continent, every country on the continent, all 54 countries, including our own country here, South Africa, including Zambia, the minister's country, and all of the other countries. We are geographically, politically, economically, linguistically, culturally different. But we all display the same deep structural challenges. What are those structural challenges, and why is it therefore so important that when we think of infrastructure, because most of you, when you think of infrastructure, you think of roads and bridges and ports and all of the things that can move trade in a country. But that's only one part of infrastructure. And I suspect many of you are here today because you are either involved, you want to be involved, or you came here to cut a few deals on infrastructure. Now that's a good thing, actually. That's actually a good thing. Because if you don't cut those deals in infrastructure, we are not going to move our economies. But there must be a purpose to moving the economies. And there are also obstacles to moving our economies. One of those obstacles is social unrest. And therefore, you have to invest in social infrastructure. Okay? So let me give you some of the statistics. Just for a minute, imagine in front of you there are 3 concentric circles. Okay? I don't have a board here, otherwise I will draw it. But you all can imagine, right? 3 circles. The center in most countries is the elite. Okay? Now, that's the political elite, the business elite, and the civil society elite. So conceivably, everybody in this room is in the center of that circle. What puts us all in the center, that's myself also, what puts us all in the center is that we have skills and we have access to capital. Those 2 things give us mobility in society. So today I can be in government, tomorrow in the private sector, the next day in academia, but I can trade what I have and I have mobility. Now look at the second circle. The second circle is the rapidly urbanizing circle. These are people, millions of people for the last several decades that have been moving to the cities. Okay, because they're escaping climate change, they're escaping poverty, they're escaping conflict, all sorts of things. And they think that at the center, because they look at the elite at the center, all of us, and they see the lives that we reach, and it's made even worse today by these, what do you call them now, these movies on TV, you know, that show, I don't watch a lot of them, what do you, soapies. You know, series, soapies, series that mimic the lives of people and create the expectation that, you know, life is like this. So people come for that. But they're coming to the second circle, they're rapidly urbanizing. So if you're South African, for example, Minister, you'll remember that in 94, you would have counted 10 informal settlements, then 100, then 1,000, then 100,000, and then you stop counting. But you've seen that, right? You've seen it in Lusaka, right, Minister? I've been there. We see it in Kenya and Nigeria and Egypt and everywhere else. That's the second circle. And then the third circle is where you work, Minister, in rural affairs and local government, which is the marginalized periphery. These are people who are engaged largely in subsistence agriculture, not in commercial agriculture. Okay, so that's the third circle that you're talking about. So what are the numbers that we're talking about? To give you the numbers and put that in perspective in Africa today, that's where our challenge is. If we take as a first defining period 1990, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the first major global shift that took place, and Africa, of course, moved from one-party states to multi-party democracy and opened up an entire new era of competitive politics, which followed also was civil wars, because we weren't maybe not ready for competitive politics or whatever. But in 1990, the population of Africa was 600 million people. Okay, so internalize that. It took us 1,990 years, 1990, to get to 600 million. In the last 40 years, we added 800 million more people. Today we are 1.4 billion on the continent. In an even shorter period, in the next 25 years, going to 2050, we will add an even larger number of people. We will add another billion people, taking us to 2.4 billion people on the continent. That's a large number. So that is what you call exponential population growth, which is what is fueling a lot of our tensions and conflicts here on the continent. The second statistic is that second circle of urbanization, largely unplanned urbanization across, including in our own country. Because you can't plan, you know, when we had that building that burned down in Johannesburg, 80-odd people died, and the minister came up and she said, part of our problem is we plan for 1 million people and 2 million arrive in the city. That's the challenge that we face. So what is that number? Today, across Africa, we are on average 40% urbanized. That second circle is 40%. So that means that South Africa may be 60 or 70%, Burundi might be 10%, but on average we are 40%. By 2050, when we are 2.4 billion people, we will be 70% urbanized. 70% urbanized. Today there is one country on the top 10 population wise, that is Nigeria. By 2050 there will be 5 countries on the top 10. That is Nigeria, Ethiopia, the DRC, Egypt, and the one that baffles everybody, the 5th one. I was there last year speaking on a platform there, and when I told them, they couldn't believe it themselves. Tanzania. The population of South Africa today is 60 million, Tanzania is 62 million. In 2050, we will be 80 million, they will be 112 million, 120 million. That's a serious number. I was speaking at the formation of the Peace and Security Council, the 20th anniversary of the African Union Peace and Security Council, and I told the delegates there that 20 years ago, when the Peace and Security Council of the African Union was founded in that city, the population of Dar es Salaam was 2.5 million. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary, the population is 7.5 million. By 2100, Nigeria, Lagos, just the city of Lagos, will be 100 million people. Who's from Nigeria here? Nobody from Nigeria, so I can say more about Nigeria. For my own protection, I had to ask, right? But so the challenge is 100 million. Anybody who's been to Lagos, and I've been to Lagos many times. Last year I arrived at 9 o'clock in the evening, you could swear it was midday. That's how much of people are teeming in the city of Lagos. Now it's probably 25 million. Think Lagos, one city, 100 million people by 2100. That's a scary statistic. Okay? So we can build freeways, highways, we can build airports, we can build ports, and we can connect trade with the center. Because that's what it will do, right? But if we don't build social infrastructure, if we don't invest in schools, in clinics, in libraries, in social spaces that create inclusion of the people in the second and the third circle. In the third circle, we are talking about subsistence agriculture. 60% of arable land in the entire world is in Africa. We only use 10%. We import about $60 billion of food into Africa. We should be exporting $100 billion of food. This is a challenge. So we are not engaged in commercial, productive, industrial agriculture to create food security, to close the gap with those millions who are coming to the second circle but not getting any jobs, by beneficiating agriculture and keeping the value chain in Africa. That's how you create employment. So if you look at Europe, Asia, and Latin America, and I'm sorry that the ambassador of Brazil is not here today, he couldn't make it, but it would have been interesting to understand what Brazil did with its huge population, huge urbanization, to take people out of poverty. It would be interesting to find out what China did, because China is unmatched and unprecedented in global history of taking 700 million people out of poverty. How do you do that? So this is really the challenge. But if you look at Europe, Asia, and Latin America, when they were urbanizing into the second circle, they were also industrializing. So low-skilled farm workers coming to the second circle were absorbed into low-skilled factory jobs. That generation sent their children to university, they moved into the services sector. Lawyers, doctors, teachers, etc., etc. And that generation sent their kids to university, and they're in the fourth industrial revolution. My grandfather was in agriculture, my father was a shoe factory worker. Premier, you remember my father. He was a shoe factory worker, not only because he was involved in politics, as a trade unionist. He sent me to university, I became a lawyer in the services sector. I sent my son to university, he's now a computer engineer, he's in the fourth industrial revolution. It's a generational shift. If you don't have that generational shift, you don't break the cycle of poverty. So now we got to think about the people in the second circle, right? Because by 2050, if we haven't closed that gap, let me tell you what's the consequences. Because I have been doing this for the last 33 years. These are the consequences. So listen carefully. In the second circle, our prognosis, not that it's going to happen, it's already happening. We are seeing a rise in social and political conflict. You saw it in Kenya last year. You saw it in Mozambique last year. You saw it in South Africa in 2021. Okay, the 6 days that we had. That's a rise in social and political conflict. And it escalates very fast to violent conflict, and then all the way to full-scale urban warfare. What is our poster child for full-scale urban warfare today? It's Sudan. The Sudan Armed Forces, 120,000 strong, is pitched against the Rapid Support Forces, a non-state armed actor that is 100,000 strong, well-armed and well-equipped. That's full-scale urban warfare. If we don't close the gap, that's the consequences. And whilst we are battling to deal with that, as all our governments are battling to deal with that, we are leaving our borders porous, and that vacuum is being filled by radicalized insurgencies and by criminal syndicates, drug traffickers, arms traffickers, human traffickers. So the challenge is urgent. That's why we have assembled this wonderful panel to tell us today what they're doing. A few years ago, I have the license of seniority now. I did say to Papelele, who's coming from the Eastern Cape, I told him, look, no, but I can ask difficult questions, but you know, I must ask responsible questions, because the challenge is serious. Let me say, the challenge that rests on our governments today is very, very serious. Somebody said to me, don't you think it was better under apartheid, they did very well and that? I said, my friend, look, you can't compare apples and oranges. There was 20 million people with a lot of gold that came from the mines, etc., that managed that situation. Today we are 60 million, 3 times the population. So you're dealing with 3 times the problem, you know, with diminished resources. And you have to balance the books, and you have to balance it. Now, it's not impossible. Let me give you one example, and then we'll go first to the minister from Zambia and to tell us what are some of the strategies they are implementing in Zambia. Minister, Ethiopia. So I have been going to Ethiopia from 1993. When I landed for the first time in Ethiopia, it was a rudimentary airport. There was no conveyor belt for your bags. They took it and they put it on a table. Somebody came with a chalk, white chalk, and defaced your bag. They put a cross on your bag to say that it's cleared. Today, Ethiopia has one of the most modern airports on the continent. It has the most successful airline by any stretch. And it has today, it's a hub for Africa. I travel frequently through Addis Ababa, and there are literally thousands of people moving. You meet lots of people in the airport. But more importantly than that, under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, I went once to go and look at rural infrastructure. Because here's the challenge. You can create infrastructure in the rural areas for farming, for example, but if you don't create the infrastructure for people who are farming to bring their goods to the city, it's useless. And so when we went out into the rural areas, what the Ethiopians under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi did was they created these hubs, agricultural hubs, etc., but they created the infrastructure so people could bring their produce to the cities where it can be exported or used by people, and then the people could go back. So they didn't have to remain in that second circle. They could go back to where they love to live. These are in their rural areas. So this is really, you know, the challenge that we face. So I thought, let me map that out for you. It's a very serious challenge, believe me. I have said, I'm on record of having said in African Union platforms and others that my prediction is that if we do not close the gap in the next decade or 2 decades, many, many countries, and I don't say this lightly. I was in Sierra Leone and Liberia last year. I met with all their security chiefs, the chief of defense, intelligence, police, border control, and their deputies, about 30 of them. in a room in both the countries, and I presented, sketched out this scenario for them. And I said to them, you are highly vulnerable to urban warfare. And you are highly vulnerable to the rise of insurgencies. And they said to me, in Sierra Leone, Liberia, both countries, 60% of their borders are unmanned, which means that all those insurgencies operating in North Africa, in the Sahel region, will just walk across the border. So I said my prediction is if we don't close the gap in the next decade or two, many African countries on our continent will slip into a dystopian future. What does that look like? It looks like Haiti today, where organized criminal syndicates, insurgencies, and others control the government. We, Minister, you will know, we escaped the first narco state, Guinea-Bissau, in Africa, where the drug lords were about to take over the state. You can imagine if a narco cartel takes over the state and has access to those resources. That's the urgency that we are dealing with. And it's really a very daunting challenge. So I have lots of sympathy for our politicians. Yeah. You know, now after I've spoken, some of them might just resign their jobs also. So, Minister Gift Simunza, he said, don't try to pronounce the last name, is a Zambian politician. He is a member of parliament representing Sinazongwe. In March 2025, he was appointed as the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. He has served in Zambia's parliament since 2016. His 2016 election was contested by his opponent. I'm not sure why they put this in a CV, but I'm assuming, Minister, you won overwhelmingly. Yes. And well, his followers use violence, not yours, the opposition. Now, Minister, when in 2020 some constituents labeled him an absentee representative, he responded that he worked hard, and I'm sure you are doing an excellent job now on development projects. Now, Minister, I have been to your country in 1979, I told you, when it was pretty much rural, most of it, even urban area. Lusaka was like that. But I got back a few years ago, and I've seen phenomenal development. And I know you've still got a long way to go, food security, etc. But tell us, what are the current challenges and how you can come here if you want. Maybe that will better. Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity given to highlight pertinent issues surrounding the way we are governing in Zambia. First, let me introduce myself. My name, or my names are Gift Simunza Sialubalo. Sialubalo is my surname. Now, knowing who we are as Africans, being we are not proud of ourselves. By the time I feel I completed discussing with you people, you would have forgotten my surname. You would have completely forgotten my name. It will go off. You will completely forget. That is where the problem lies. We are not proud of ourselves. You'll just be thinking of gift, yes, because it's a broad name. It's surprising that in my CV, everything surrounding how I won, what I was accused of is there. I'm really surprised. I never thought that could have been there.
No, let me clarify your
No, let me put it clear. Yes, in 2016, I won. I got about 36,000 votes. The closest was 2,000. In 2021, I got 46,000. The closest was 1,500. I think it explains who I am. Yes. It explains who I am. Yes. Colleagues, it's really wonderful that I'm here in Pretoria for the first time. So Cape Town. In Cape Town for the first time. Wonderful place, wonderful people. Moreover, Zambia is your first home, not second home. South Africans. That is your first home. So I'm your brother, we are your brothers. I became a member of parliament in the year 2016 as an opposition member of parliament. There was then the ruling party, Patriotic Front, under President Edgar Chagwa, where we had a different ball game together in actualizing development. By then, whatever resources were meant to go towards development were gotten using the loan. We had a lot of challenges. Even the Constituency Development Fund, initially where a member of parliament was given about 1.6 million, it was unattainable to achieve that. 1.6 million kwacha dollars can be how much? The rough calculation? That is about $70,000, somewhere there. It was unattainable to do so. I do recall in my 5 years of tenure, I just received the $70,000 twice. That should have been every year in 5 years. So it showed that there was total collapse of the system because even the debt swelled. That's the challenge that the new government, my government, under President Hakainde Hichilema, when he took over, he thought of fighting how to have the debt restructured. And that we are in a right trajectory. Whatever that a country wants to achieve, one thing, there should be political will. The politicians that stand to say, yes, we want to go and do this, please, that is where the problem lies. Make sure. Don't vote for politicians because they are your relatives, because you'll be ruining a country. Don't vote for politicians because they are more lighter than myself, who is dark, then you are ruining the country. I'm trying to be very friendly. Listen to politicians. Be convinced with what they are telling you. I'm a politician. I'll be very, very frank. One thing that the current President Hakainde Hichilema, did when he was opening Parliament in 2021, October, I do recall, he indicated to say Zambia is not Lusaka, and Lusaka is not Zambia. I repeat, the President said Zambia is not Lusaka, and Lusaka is a. If you are in South Africa, you will say Pretoria is not in, and South Africa is not in, meaning Cape Town is not South Africa, and South Africa is a. So what he was trying to drive at was to say there should be a paradigm shift in the way we allocate resources. he said there should be paradigm shift in the way we allocate resources, because every voter in Zambia during a voting period, they do vote. And the entire population is affected with challenges. Many are times that central or capital cities consume a lot of money at the expense of those who are suffering. So the president decided that we change the narrative, and that narrative, it is paying dividends in Zambia. Big dividends. He told us as members of parliament to say each MP will walk away with $1 million United States dollars from $70,000. The opposition, they said, where is he going to get the money? This is just a hoax. Where is he going to get the money? Where there is a will, resources are just mobilized. There should be prudence. What was impossible, I remember some of us were very old during our education at primary school in grade 1. If you say 1 minus 2, the answer was it can't. So meaning you don't just have to reason, you just know that it can't. So it became very possible. Money was released in the year 2022 to all the 156 parliamentary constituencies, regardless of which political party you come from. That builds unity in a nation. That builds unity in a nation. In the year 2023, we saw a jump from $1 million to $1.1 million per constituency. These resources are meant to sort out issues at constituency level under decentralization, meaning it should be bottom-up approach. Any ordinary person in a ward, under a ward development fund committee, should make a decision. A ward development committee has got zones. I believe you have wards here, isn't it? It has got zones. Those are the people who feed into the WDC, the ward development committee, problems that they want to be attended to. From there, the ward development committee will take to the constituency development fund, where an MP is an ex-official, not chairman, ex-official. From there, you sit and look at what has been submitted. Colleagues, I can attest to you to say this is performing wonders mostly in rural areas, where people used to go and get water in a stream and river. Now they have piped water with a solar. That's a command. A solar connect the communities to piped water. Where we had no dams due to drought, a lot of dams are being created at the constituency level using the same. You are aware, maybe it's different here, you are aware that in Africa, school space is a challenge. Those are the resources that are being utilized. Once you build a classroom block, it should come with desks. And the president says, these resources, there is nothing like someone coming from Lusaka, rushing to my constituencies in Azongwe to come and do the project. No. Projects should be done by locals, so that resources remain in that particular constituency. We've seen a lot of work. And look at who are appreciating is the rural constituencies. Meaning the gap that was created was so immense, like what you said. It was so immense. I am on a marathon tour of investing or inspecting all the projects in the 156 parliamentary constituencies. I have to connect what the president's vision is and what is obtaining on the ground. Not only on the infrastructure development. The president says we have a lot of grade 9 and grade 7 dropouts. Someone, because he has failed to go into grade 12, shouldn't be deemed as a total failure. There is something that such a person can do. We can't be nurses, we can't be doctors, we can't be engineers, or some should be doing other issues. It says 20% of the money should go towards skills training. People, our youth, should be trained. There is a lot of skills, the carpentry, bricklaying, welding, a lot that we need. Some of us who are called the upper mwamba. We need an electrician to come and fit our house once we construct one. We need a plumber to come and do plumbing works. So the president says 20% of that money should go towards it. That. He says people are suffering. Some they need even $100 to start business in the remotest part of the constituency. He says, no, let them have cooperatives or clubs. Each club, give it $2,000, the 20%. The school-going children, those that need to pay bursaries, some fees at secondary school, the CDF component is taking care of such a community or such a youth. So government institutions, government schools, as we stand now, it is a free education. A parent, you don't buy anything for a child. So I've told you to say it starts with a good choice that you make as voters. You make a wrong choice, you'll be having meetings every day, you'll be having until Jesus comes. So sometimes when I look at what is happening, I was even talking to my colleagues, I said, democracy, yes, we inherited it. It is good when we have a bad leader. But when you have a good leader, democracy is very, very bad. Because the time he wants to perfect everything, time up, can you leave? Someone who comes up to take over, he destroys everything. So the choices that we make as Africans matters. Let's listen to what us politicians are telling you. It shouldn't be sugar-coated. We should mean what we mean. Moreover, you need a politician. Sometimes I'm not even known. Tomorrow you hear my president. Who will give me the connections? You need someone who's really connected politically for someone. Because the exposure is there when someone is connected. The exposure is there. You limit connection, limited exposure. So it's very important that as Africans, we have what it takes to change the narrative. We have what it takes. We have the resources in terms of minerals. We have everything. What we need is a political will, like what we are experiencing in Zambia. If I told you you like village life, I took you on a marathon tour that we are doing, you'll be amazed to see the change. We are calling it now a game changer. CDF is a game changer. Villages, rural parts of the country are being transformed. In a town like here, Cape Town, you put a 1x3 classroom block. Who appreciate it? Because you have enough. You put a 1x3 classroom in Osaka. Who appreciate it? But there is a way you can use the same money to look at the need of those people, that particular modernized, so to speak, population. What do they need? Attend to their need using the same money. So that in a short sermon, that's the package that I have.
You have to sit.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister, and you took exactly 10 minutes, so that was very good. This is how you won the election. Yes, I was hoping when you clarified that, you told people don't vote for the families, because I was thinking, man, how does the minister have 46,000 people in his family? No, thank you very much for mapping that out, because it's all about inclusion. And Minister told me earlier that Zambia is open for business. So in case you're disappointed sitting here thinking, man, sat here thinking I'm going to cut the deal, all they're telling me about is this social inclusion. Really, the continent of Africa has huge challenges. If you are here for nothing else but thinking about your own selfish interest about making some money, the continent is open for business. There's huge business to be done on the continent. It's people are not thinking laterally. They're not thinking about the fact that this is really just a whole continent waiting to be developed. That is it, how to bring the investment and develop the continent. And Minister has already given us some of that there. Now, in case also you are thinking now, how will I even get there, because I need some money to go and invest. We decided to bring Palisa Ryan here because she is the coverage head, social health and education at the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa. DBSA is a state-owned development bank with a mandate to develop finance and implement infrastructure projects mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. And the unit, you have to listen carefully now, the unit provides funding for housing projects in the affordable housing sector, including social housing and other housing projects in support of the National Department of Human Settlements. In the education sector, the unit funds construction projects for institutions at a primary, secondary, and tertiary level, and includes the funding of student housing. Under the health sector, the unit funds projects in the healthcare sector, including hospitals, clinics, and medical devices. ICT projects, insofar as they fall under housing, education, healthcare sectors, are also funded. DBSA utilizes both on and off balance sheet funding structures, including private sector partnerships. The bank utilizes a number of funding instruments from debt to quasi-equity to fund bankable projects, and also has a project preparation facility which is utilized for pre-bankable projects. And Palesa is the head of this. She has been 6 years with the bank. She has a BCom in finance and has been in the banking industry for over 22 years. And Palesa is going to come now and tell us how the bank invests in social infrastructure and the opportunities that exist in the bank for you to access that.
I thought I could bring my feminine skills of multitasking to see how I could streamline this approach, but it appears that the mics aren't working. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to represent the DBSA. We are a DFI with a footprint both in South Africa as well as across the continent. So certainly we do have the checkbook, Minister, to assist you with projects in Zambia as well. From a funding perspective, where the DBSA is well positioned is we pride ourselves in having an integrated and holistic offering where we're able to assist our clients with both planning for the infrastructure. As the moderator also mentioned, we have a project preparation facility in place. We have financing, as well as within our infrastructure delivery division, we are also able to implement, maintain, and deliver on the infrastructure. Bringing it closer to home in terms of the sectors that my team and I cover, we've been able to assist the Department of Basic Education, as an example, in terms of rolling out schools in the Eastern Cape as well as in KZN. And on the healthcare side as well, we're currently involved in Limpopo in delivering on one of the biggest tertiary hospital projects in the country. As mentioned, we work with all arms of government as well, so certainly an integrated approach in how we look at infrastructure becomes important. Our sponsors, most of whom can be on the private sector side as well, do complain in terms of the provision of approvals from our municipalities, and I'm actually not alone. I'm joined by my colleagues, Ben, who looks after local government and support unit, and we leverage a lot as an example of his clients as well in social infrastructure, because we appreciate that you need that interaction of municipality in terms of provision for bulk infrastructure, who then our sponsors on the developer side then leverage off to build top of ground structures. We've been quite successful in rolling out some programs as well. Like I mentioned, we also have planning. One of the programs that we've been responsible for, and my colleague Stacey is also here, having been a part of that, was the Student Housing Infrastructure Program Management Office, which the DBSA established. We were able to roll out student housing, about 14,000 beds in the first phase. DBSA on the funding side was able to secure 4 of the 5 universities to provide debt for that, losing out on one of the bids to Standard Bank. We're busy now with the second phase at TUT, where we are also looking to roll that out. And Minister, we've also delivered on projects across the continent, because certainly since COVID, we found that the traditional approach of delivering on infrastructure, especially in a continent like ours, where there are challenges from a funding perspective, is how do we leapfrog and move within those constraints of resource availability. So we have funded a project, the Côte d'Ivoire Schools Project, where we've leveraged a lot on ICT as an enabling tool. And we're seeing this also coming through in the healthcare space in terms of telemedicine, and with the talk of NHI as well, there's an appreciation that there'd have to be ICT enablement solutions in place so that our clients, or rather the patients, regardless of whether they're getting service in the public or private sector, are able to have a holistic client journey in terms of accessing their records as they move through the continuum of care. I think I'll hold it there. I'm not a politician. So in fact, I was raised in the investment banking days of, we want an elevator pitch, so you have to in 3 points. So I don't know, Marita, if you wanted to give me a prompting question or if that's sufficient for now.
No, I think what we're going to do is take the inputs and then we'll come back to the questions also.
Wonderful.
But, certainly, I think many people now have a sense of what the bank is able to fund, because, you know, largely people don't know about all of the financing structures that exist out there. So it's good that you're able to, so maybe when you come back, you could also, give people a sense of how they can access that. Because, it's not for South Africa, it's for Southern Africa.
100%. Yeah. No, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. So we had a country, Zambia. We had the bank that looked at financing for social infrastructure, and now we will go to 2 provinces in our country to look at it from a microcosm level now, how this is done. The Minister gave us from a macrocosm level, so we're going to start with Bapalele Mashlaba, the Head of Strategic Investment and Infrastructure in the Office of the Premier of the Eastern Cape. Unfortunately, the Premier could not be with us due to other pressing commitments, but I think this is a man who knows what's happening there, because he's the one in charge of these strategic projects. So, Babalele, we give you the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Vasu. Let me try and make it short and try and follow the right examples. As I rise on the established protocol, Minister, I can still say Siyabulalo. I'm gonna keep practicing, Minister, until I get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to speak at this session today. And I suppose I don't have quite a lot to say that is different from what the minister was saying and making examples of today. But I'm pretty sure that most of you are quite interested in knowing what exactly we're trying to do in the Eastern Cape. And I must say, Vasu, in 1994, and we keep saying this because people don't really get what it actually really means. In 1994, we're probably one of the few provinces, if not the only two, that inherited two Bantustans. Yep. We inherited Transkei, we inherited Sidssa. And from a social infrastructure perspective, that already meant that in 1994 we were starting 10 steps behind everybody else because of the neglect and the underinvestment in the Bantustans during the apartheid years. And since then, it's been a struggle. In 2006, we started a process towards a growth and development plan in the earlier days of growth and development plans. In 2014, we tried to look at what exactly are we doing, and we started taking stock. So by 2014, we had already realized that we had about 5,400 schools that were registered on our system, but only half of those actually existed in terms of proper infrastructure. And already it meant that we had to quite build a lot of schools in a very short space of time. So we put together a 10-year infrastructure plan in 2014. We got to adopt it in 2016, and we've been moving with speed in terms of implementing that 10-year infrastructure plan in response to the SDGs. And quite interestingly, you, in not so many words, in your opening remarks, spoke less about infrastructure, but more so about human capital. Because in social infrastructure, one of the things that we've negated as a country is how do we infuse in human capital when we're actually building infrastructure. I'll make an example. Our model for human settlements is informed of what comes out of the Freedom Charter, that there shall be shelter. So in essence, we make an assessment as who is deserving to be built a house, because everyone deserves a decent shelter. And that assessment is on the basis of, for a lack of a better word, indigency. And once we have established that you're unemployed, you're unable to build a house for yourself, we then notify you, or rather, we confirm you as a beneficiary. But somehow, once we've appointed contractors and once we've gone through all of that process, post the beneficiary management system, at the point when we're supposed to build 500 houses in a particular village or in a particular township, somehow everyone forgets that you're building 500 houses for people who are unemployed. And somehow the 500 beneficiaries of those households are not infused in the actual construction of the very homes that we want to give and hand over to when they are completed. And this is the struggle that we have. What it actually does is that there is lack of appreciation from the very person that you are giving a key to that particular house, because they don't know how it came about. Yeah. They didn't feel it every morning when they had to wake up every morning and be part of the people that are putting together the cement, part of the people that are shuttling bricks into the site and so forth. And what happens is, because we don't have an integrated part of, say for a better word, ensuring that people are able to earn a living whilst we are trying to get them out of poverty in response to the SDG goals, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 2 years down the line, that house becomes the only thing that a person can trade off. And what do? They trade it off to an undocumented foreigner in the country. Goes back to the shack where they were living for the 15 years whilst waiting for the house. And in some cases, they migrate to the bigger urban centers. And this has been the challenge that we faced in a province such as the Eastern Cape. We have two types of immigrations. We have people that leave rural areas to the bigger centers in the province looking for employment. Equally, we have people who leave the province to go to other provinces where they think there's better opportunities. And as a result, most of what we have lost as an opportunity to invest in social infrastructure in the province, we've lost it because our funding formula as a country works on the basis of a population. Up until about 9 years ago, we were the third biggest province. Right now, we are the fourth biggest province, overtaken by the Western Cape. And it's not because of people that are born in the Western Cape. It's because of people who leave the Eastern Cape and migrate to the Western Cape. And we speak less about their living conditions where they are currently in the informal settlements. And this is a part of what I wanted to reflect on, but safe to say, as a province, I normally use a term that says we've done the documenting of backlogs. I mean, we're currently sitting about 72 billion of infrastructure backlogs from an education sector point of view. We, in the past term of government, in the sixth term, we built 105 schools in 6 years. We're planning to build 138. It's going to require 7.2 billion. And that's all that we can make. But if you were to give me 5.2 billion today, I can give you 61 schools that are complete in terms of planning, that are ready to be built. But I'm unable to build those schools because I don't have the 5.2 billion. And by the time I go back to those communities to build those schools, people have left those areas. And this is one of the challenges that we had when DBSA built for us and with us 261 schools in the Eastern Cape. Some of those schools are standing empty because, and this is the value of human capital, you expect somebody to wait for 10 years for a school, but they have a 6-year-old child that must go to school. So what do? They either take the 6-year-old to a cousin in Cape Town or to an aunt in Johannesburg where they can access school. And by the time you come back 10 years later to build that school, there's nobody to go to that school because the community have found an alternative solution on how to educate their own children. And that's the struggle that we have. It's not the lack of understanding of what the needs are, but we have a resource constraint with the unavailability of enough budget to be able to build an infrastructure that speaks to the communities where we are. And we're doing the most that we can. I mean, the Premier is on record as having said X amount of billion is going to be required in order to actually correct just the roads. Because in as far as the roads, what people don't understand, Vasu, is if you drive in the Eastern Cape and you are on tar road, if the road is surfaced, whether it's by tar or paving or whatever else, chances are you're on 10% of the road network in the province. That's 3,700 kilometers of road that's surfaced. But whenever we look at social media, and all my friends from Cape Town, from Joburg, from Durban, who drive nicely back home, and they're stuck on a gravel road because it's not trafficable, and they wait there for road assistance for 16 hours. Just remember, you are on the 37,000 kilometer that is not surfaced. So it's going to take a long time for us to be able to surface all of those road networks at 2 billion a year, and it's not going to be easy. We've actually, as a province, have been at least on a receiving end of very good investment from the South African National Road Agency, which is SANRAL, and they've done something very good from a DBSA perspective, and something maybe this is what we can do for South Africa, because they have been able to package our road network outside of tolling, and they've been able to raise about 50 billion in the market through other finance institutions, and they're plowing that back into the Eastern Cape. But again, those are still the key trade routes. We're still not talking about building roads that connect villages to economic opportunities. So it's going to take a long time, but I must say before I sit down, one of the things that encourages us about this particular platform is that we have been now in conversations with SYMPOSIUM for the past 8 years or so, but since they were formed. And for the first time, I think this year, on our package of 9 projects that we're working with Infrastructure South Africa with, I can pretty much tick all the boxes around how the partnership is assisting us to create opportunities for fishing in rural communities, creating small ports where in our coastal communities, people are going to be able to at least go to sea, launch their boats, and come back and make a living. We are talking to them about adding more to the 11 water supply augmentation schemes that we're doing as a province, and they're coming to the party. We can talk to the irrigation schemes, which speaks to the subsistence agriculture that you are talking about. The one thing that was good about Bantustan's was the irrigation schemes. They ran effectively. We looked down on it when the new government came into power. Now we're going back, and we are resuscitating the irrigation schemes because they serve a particular purpose. And we're going to be able, using the irrigation schemes, run proper models that are better in terms of ensuring that people are able to earn a living where they are, rather than migrating to smaller towns and migrating to bigger cities to look for opportunities. And this is what we are trying to do to solve food security, but also assist our people to earn livelihoods. With those few words, let me just say my input about the lessons learned from South Africa and Africa as a continent. There's still quite a lot more that we have to do from a health infrastructure perspective, but the plans are there, and we're trying our best. Thank you, Vasu.
No, thank you very much. I think that gave us a very good sense of the challenges that are there, and something to know that government cannot do this on its own. It's just impossible. The challenges are too much, so it has to be with the private sector also. Now, in KwaZulu-Natal, we lost in the 80s. Many people don't know this. We lost 20,000 people to conflict in the 80s. And this is the crucible in which this young man that I remember grew up in. And one day I had the privilege of moderating a debate between this young man and Professor Patrick Bond, who's a very, very high intellectual. And Patrick Bond turned to me and he said, "Vasu, this guy is very sharp." And he had all his facts on his fingertips, and this young man rose to be in the ANC Youth League, and from there all the way to becoming the premier of the province, a leader of the ANC, national government minister, and I'm very proud to say he comes from my province.
Thanks, thanks, Vasu. I have a serious problem with introductions. One, if there are two things, it's either borders on obituary. If not the obituary, it then will paint a picture that you are old, yet you are not yet there. So you will be called former this, former this, former this. I wish to greet all panelists and our moderator, and all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Late this year, South Africa will host the G20 summit. And we have taken a view that we will dedicate this to deal with issues of inequality. And we have said our theme will be solidarity, equality, and sustainability, trying to build on what we achieved in the last year's G20 by Brazil, which laid a foundation on addressing issues of disasters as well as inequality. Now, coming straight to issues that are at hand, if we deal with resilience from what? I think in our case there will be two pertinent challenges: resilience from disasters, but resilience from poverty, which is affecting South Africa. In his presentation earlier, unpacking the topic, Vasu talked about the growth of the population. One thing that is fundamental is that when we were developing the NDP, National Development Plan, we said in 2012, South Africa by 2030 would have at least 60 million people. 5 years before that, we have surpassed that 60 million. And the growth is high, and it is leading to urbanization, which is unplanned. And therefore, proper planning is quite important. It is important that we plan even for informal settlement. And that's why the situation that we see in other municipalities is worrying, where people stay in areas with no ablution facilities, no access to water. And therefore, I think what the minister said from Zambia is quite important. Decentralization of power, political and fiscal power, is going to be important to deal with issues on the ground. What are we doing as the department? We've got a National Infrastructure Plan 2050. It deals with broad or catalytic project, but it also deals with sectoral plans of infrastructure. So focus on water, focus on energy, logistics, but we also deal with social infrastructure. But before I get into social infrastructure, when it comes to mitigating the disasters, we have also programs. The first program is build green buildings. We have a green buildings policy, and we want to encourage that we adapt so that we mitigate the impact of the climate change. The second program we have is the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Plan, the IREREP. These programs seek to bring the three support to our big facilities. The first one is the reuse of water, water management. The second is electricity, which include use of alternative energy. Then the last is waste management. We deal with these in big facilities like your prisons and others. We have already finalized the scope of work. I think the first advert was done for the private sector to participate and express their interest, and we'll continue to issue more going forward. We are working through our entity, which is Agrima SA, to promote green product or product that are more environmental friendly. Now, in terms of our programs, when it comes to social infrastructure, through Infrastructure South Africa, we're packaging projects such as schools, and you will find that the Department of Education would have planned to build schools over the 10-year period. We'll then plan through SYMPOSIUM, package and front load those projects, and then we pay the investors over the period of time. That also include housing. If I may just give details, we have, through SYMPOSIUM, we're working for KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo to on the program of schools. For Northern Cape, with package project for housing that would have been implemented maybe for in the next 10 years, but they will be implemented now because we are inviting the private sector to fund, and therefore we will be able to pay over the next 10-year program. Lastly, we are investing in rural development. Well, Sizwe Bridges, it's one of the programs that talk to social infrastructure development in rural areas. If we are to fight poverty, we have to also ensure that we focus on rural development. Roads, schools, clinics, but economic activities. That's why we talk of the district development model that must work on creating economic hubs in our rural districts. Thank you.
See, I told you, he's very clear, very concise, very precise. By the way, his degrees are all in communication. He's a specialist in that, but you can see the experience. And one of the things, though, Minister, that I've said, you know, time and time again, government sometimes is really bad at communicating what it does. Because look at what you've given us. Now people are educated about what government is doing. And very often people don't know that government is doing all of these things. They just think that people are sitting there and driving around in these vehicles and that. But so it's better sometimes that government communicates this. Right, now we have a few minutes. I'm going to open this up for discussion. So let me give you some time. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes. I don't know if any of the organizers are here, but they can tell us. I don't see anybody here, which means I'm now in charge. Right. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So, we are part of the BRICS, and we should be having access to what China does. With, I don't know how many billion people, and they don't have these problems that we do have. There's something that they're doing right. What can we do to maximize on our relationship, partnership, whatever you call it, with China? Why do we keep on taking our raw minerals to China instead of China coming to South Africa to beneficiate right here, and we have the benefit of creating jobs, etc.? Why don't we use the Chinese money, if it's affordable, it's not cheap money, by the way, to build bullet trains, accessibility, connectivity easier in Africa, but still in South Africa, of course.
No, thank you very much. So if you can just note those questions. There was a lady in the end there.
Hello, my name is Dr. Trillian Small. As a psychologist, you all have mentioned building human capital. And there's a quote that I love that says, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets, which means if it's not working, it's not working for a reason. If it's working, it's working for a reason. As we consider changing the mindsets of individuals, moving them from townships maybe to better places of living, what kind of programs do you all already have established, or could we create that actually helps people to change their mindset so that they're not selling their homes to another immigrant and then going back to the shack that they just came from? I think
Sure.
it's a systemic mindset change that has to happen. Otherwise, you'll just perpetuate the cycle.
So Babalela, you'll maybe because you raised the human capital, and Minister Sigalala, you can handle the BRICS one. Let's take one or two more. Yeah, let's go here.
I actually have a comment.
Yes, if it's a 1 minute comment, it's acceptable. If it's a half an hour comment, you'll leave it for the next session.
I actually wrote my points, and my comment is I believe in South Africa we're creating a very weak state. That is the unemployment rate of South Africa currently. Free healthcare, free education, free housing. Can you really, really, really survive with those free things? Maybe we need to go back and reimagine that democracy properly to say that we need to work for things. I believe that. For an example, if everything is free, people do not move around. Transportation networks collapse. Healthcare systems, everything is free, whereas we're paying those pharmaceutical companies. I believe that in South Africa we need to have real conversations because we are definitely not moving in a state that can take people out of poverty, but I feel that we are going more into crisis mode. I mean, we've got 5-year-olds already on grant, how much money on grant, and then free education, and then you still invest in condoms and they're not being used, and contraceptives not being used for free, and then when there's a child, you pay for the child, and then free healthcare, free education, free university, and then I don't work, and then free grant. What are we saying in this country? That's my point. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And then my question is about the movement of people in the SADC region. Why are we struggling with an orderly movement of people in terms of making sure that people are moving legally, they are documented, we know who is where, we know who is not where, and also then is the movement of goods. Because if you are to grow the region, you have to make sure that goods are moving properly. What is being done at a SADC level or at a state level to make sure that you got proper borders and the people who are in each of the country are proper people, you know? If you just look at the borders between, I always say South Africa has got imaginary borders. You know, it's like having a house and you've got a gate and you tell everybody, enter through this gate, but there's no fence around. It's organized imaginary. Because if you have been to, the only place where there is a gate is Beit Bridge, but the rest of the 200 kilometer has got nothing. What is the plan with that? Because you have to have people that you know. You can't have people you don't know.
So Minister, if you will handle that, and I think draw for us, how do we manage the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which talks about cross-border trade, and at the same time, how do we manage this transition of people? Let's take one last question there, and then we'll give them a chance. And Palisa, in the meanwhile, you know, just think about that question, because how do we bridge the private sector and the public sector to meet these challenges?
Thank you. Good afternoon. So my name is Lina. I'm from a company called Tech. We make smart concrete and road materials that are heavy duty. So we aim to build zero pothole infrastructure within the continent. So my question is, in the road infrastructure space, what is it that the government in South Africa and also in Zambia are doing to actually encourage researchers to come up with technologies that are helping to maintain the infrastructure, but also to ensure that we manage disasters and ensure that we are resilient when it comes to climate change?
No, great. So I can put my 4x4 on hold until your roads are laid out. Right. Shall we start with the BRICS question? No, you can go here, it's fine.
Maybe let me make comment on two questions. The first one, BRICS. I think my approach will be imperialism is imperialism, irrespective of where it comes from. And we are quite correct to say we cannot be in BRICS and encourage an imbalanced trade. Trade balance is quite important, that if we trade with a particular country, it must be a mutual benefit. We are working within the BRICS framework to ensure that, for instance, what we import a lot from China, we are a primary destination of their solar panels. If you talk about China, they know the immediate market is South Africa. So we are working on ensuring that we engage on trade so that they come and establish in our special economic zones. there is that encouragement of Chinese. But the second thing that we would want to see is to look on both tariff and non-tariff approach to encourage industrialization in the country. So I think I will end there on that one. On the issue of the comment, I think we welcome the comment. Is good, provocative, good thinking. Maybe if you can also reduce this into a writing, can be even a good opinion article. It can influence, and it's helpful that it comes from someone who's younger and speak quite vocal about these issues. Later this year, we will be convening a national dialogue where all stakeholders will discuss about the society we want to create. And we expect that dialogue to come up with a framework, with a vision that will take us forward. When we were speaking earlier, we referred to the Freedom Charter. Freedom Charter was a vision for a free South Africa. We don't need a vision for the next 50 years, what kind of a society we want. And are we taking responsibility of building that society, all of us? I think those are two issues. Orderly movement, I think I must comment on that. We are working on ensuring that there is integration of SADC under SACU. This intend to regulate the movement of goods and people. But it intends to ensure also that we grow the trade in SADC. Currently, the movement is still in line with that colonial order, where people would come to Johannesburg because of mining. And they come now to South Africa because of to be cheap laborers, whether you talk of what we saw in the collapse of the building here in George. So you see that people of Africa, in particular the SADC, are coming here either to become cheap labor because the market, the business sector, avoid to meet the labor practices of the country, especially the minimum wage. And that's why you will have people coming here. There will also be people coming here because of crime, and that must be dealt with. But we are growing the integration of the region for trade. If you, some have noticed, Minister Mantashe 2 or 3 days ago launched the strategic mineral strategy. That strategy seeks to influence the country and our neighbors on how we utilize the minerals. Shouldn't we have something that is like your OPEC, where OPEC is where those who own oil determine the price, they determine how to trade. Shouldn't we create that kind of a strategy in Africa, based on minerals and based on agriculture? Thanks.
So, Minister, maybe pick up the issue on integration.
Thank you. I want to answer that question. The one who asked the question, what's my son? What is my son? That is the problem. I think answering your question, we need to go back to the drawing board. As Africans, we just need to go back to the drawing board. If I ask all of you here, the role Oliver Tambo, may his soul rest in peace, played in the liberation of South Africa. Mandela prayed. Kenneth Kaunda, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Mwalimu Nyerere. Do we still think about them in our lives? Do we? Do we really think about them? That's where the problem is. That's why we are respecting these geographical boundaries, which we never created ourselves. You'll be proud South African, calling me names because I'm in Zambia, which has less GDP than South Africa. We need to realize that we are Africans and we are brothers. When we realize that, even trade will be very easy. It will be very easy for our presidents to sit and actualize our demand. The president should know that Africans want to unite like yesterday. Africans want to trade like yesterday. Already the foundation was created by our forefathers. Along the line, we lost it. We worked in isolation. Let us blame ourselves as Africans. We need to blame ourselves. Especially this generation. A generation which seemed to even lose the tradition and custom. I remember during our days when we were still young in the villages, our parents, our grandfathers could come make firewood. After dinner, we sit there, they started telling us about where they come from, history, and where they are. They have brought things easy and worsened our culture. We are rushing to this, forgetting who we are as Africans. How many of us as parents sit with our children to give them direction in terms of future direction? None. We are praising China because they have never changed their culture. Chinese, they have got their own eating habits. If it's 11 hours, they break, they go for lunch. After an hour or 2 hours, they come and work. As each one goes to eat alone when you feel like. You go and pick your own meal, you go. There is total disorder. As Africans, if you want to move in this agenda, trajectory of having united Africa, where you can go anywhere and trade, it is mindset. Let us accept to say we are proud Africans without a boundary. It's really shocking, like the example you gave, where you just put a gate to say, no, you should just be passing here, but you know, there is nothing this side. It's shocking, but that is the reality. So sometimes we shouldn't just end up in this gathering. Once we leave everything behind. That's where the problem is. Whatever we do, there should be follow-up as Africans. Otherwise, we shall be talking about China taking materials. Yes, they will take materials. Are we ready? Where do we take it? If they can't take it, where do we take it? Where do we take it? We are a problem, our only problem. Sometimes we should have engagements that bear fruits. These are the engagements that we should have. We have a lot of, even the Chinese that have come, they were how many miles from here? Even in terms of kilometers, how many? From here to China. Why and where are we? And when they come, we want to blame them. Me, I can't blame them. I blame myself. These are the opportunities where we don't have. We engage those who have to say, how do we work together? We have land as you are coming from China with money, or from Europe with money. Us, we have land, we have these minerals, let us partner. I don't think anyone can refuse. I don't think so. We have lost it as an Africans, even now the generation to come after us. I don't know what will happen. I don't know here in South Africa, but you look at our generation. Friday, everyone is thinking of drinking. Friday, Saturday, everyone is thinking of drinking. I don't know here. Maybe it's different.
No, we start Thursday.
So, now how do we blame people who are focused? How do we blame them? Huh? They will use us to get rich. And you want to blame them. And the problem with us Africans, we have no patience. We want an investment now to start today and bear fruits today. So, my dear brother, be the champion of Africa change. An African should change. There was a lady who brought a very important issue. My dear sister, I've told my team to take note of your products so that we can engage each other. Yes, we engage each other. If you are offering a good product, very competitive, we are Africans, we need to embrace. We are here, we came here to get the best practices from here. So there is no way we can keep the best practices to ourselves, we don't implement. We want to be a different Africa. Africans, change of mindset. When you were growing up, you were told whatever you were doing, it was primitive, and you left it. Isn't it? So who do you want to blame? Go back to the drawing board. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Papa Lele, do you want to handle the human capital question quickly?
Very quickly, and I'll do it from here, Vasu. I think the reality is at some point we need to realize, in not so many words, what Minister has basically said is just we need to go back to the drawing board. Most of the developing nations, or most of the developed nations that have actually realized development in their own countries, have done so because of appreciation of culture, embracing indigenous knowledge systems, preservation of language, and being able to grow from a baseline of having an understanding of where communities come from and where communities are going. In our province, for a very long time, we had, and we still have, schools that are built on mud bricks. And we call them mud schools. And this is the program that we partnered with the Development Bank of Southern Africa to actually eradicate. What was quite interesting about mud schools is that as much as people look down on mud schools, they were built by communities. And as a child, I went actually through primary education through mud schools. And then we migrated and we learned in churches before the then government then built proper schools. But by the time schools come, there's an appreciation that education is not about infrastructure, but it's about being able to learn and understand and grow from a baseline of what those before you have been able to create as a platform. So this thing about having a society that is as destructive as our society is a big challenge. And it's a challenge for all of us. We keep building schools, they keep being eradicated through vandalism. Most of the social infrastructure we have, we are unable to take stock of what we've been able to do, because when you build, somebody else is ready to destroy. And this is a problem, that society is not growing on the same par with the very government that it has actually elected. So it's going to take a lot of education, and it's not going to be classroom education. It has to be about the lessons that we share, the conversations that we have amongst each other. Those that are able to see the light must be able to share the light to those that have not seen it. So self-actualization is not necessarily going to happen in a classroom environment. And I mean, I'll make this as the last example, Vasu. In the past 6 years, we've had a fortunate and unfortunate case in the province where government paid about 260 million for 10,000 hectares of land and restored this 10,000 hectares of land to a community trust. And 6 years later, it's very sad that I can tell you that whatever was there that was valued as 260 million, it's gone. The land is still there, and even today, the trust is still not agreeing on what needs to be done with the 10,000 hectares of land. Because everybody comes to them and tells them they're going to build the malls that look like Dubai and all kinds of things. And these people, for some reason, whether opportunistically or realistically, they believe these things. And we keep going back and to say to them, what actually are you guys doing on the land? No, they're actually farming, they're growing maize. And I'm saying the next time somebody else comes here, tell them how they're going to double the output of maize that you're growing on this land before they tell you that they're going to build you a mall. So it's going to be a process of taking our people with us and not being tired because they made the wrong call last year or they've made the wrong decision, but being able to be patient with people and understanding that whenever you invest, however much in social infrastructure or in various communities, it can't go alone. It has to be accompanied with education. And that education doesn't have to be certificates. We have to invest in social facilitation that is aimed at growing and developing people and human capital as we develop as a country. Thank you, Vasu.
No, thank you very much. I think that was very, very clear. But let's end with you. Last year, the year before last, I had dinner with the Singaporean ambassador in Durban. We were chatting, and he said, because you are the development bank of Southern Africa, not South Africa. And he said to me, he said, you know, when I look at SADC as a region, and I look at ASEAN as a region, there's a lot we can do together as regions. Because we have similar populations, all of that, and we have some things we can share with you, you have some things that you can share with us, and we can grow together. And I said, well, it's a great idea, Ambassador. Did you put this to the SADC Secretariat? And he said, I did. And I said, so what happened? And he said, well, then individual African countries came on their own to the ASEAN to cut deals, instead of coming as a region. What can the bank do with this challenge that I presented earlier, the deep structural challenge, to ensure that when we talk public-private partnership, we talk about a regional public-private partnership that can pull the whole region out? Because as South Africa, we are not a market. As Southern Africa, we are a market. So let me leave that with you.
No, thank you for that. So if I think of the DBSA and certainly how our primary business still remains funding, and you are right, most people think that we're the Development Bank of South Africa as opposed to Southern Africa. And we do have originating teams both for SADC as well as Africa excluding SADC, because we've appreciated the importance for Sub-Saharan Africa in general and SADC in particular being able to be sustainable. And certainly to help us get around the challenge of, I've got a gate. I mean, that was a beautiful analogy. And part of the challenges that we're seeing in terms of urbanization and the pressure that's being put on South Africa is because of the surrounding countries and the region not operating as optimally as they could be. And we see this a lot actually bearing forth in social infrastructure. We've seen the challenges across basic education in particular, where a lot of the schools are either low-fee schools or low-income schools, or no-income schools rather, as well as in our healthcare infrastructure. So what we do, we have a regional body called SADC DFRC, In fact, a former colleague of mine is now the CEO of SEDEC DFRC, so I can speak to Zweli to really get the ball going there. And DBSA is actually one of the few members who pay the subscription fees. So it starts even with that, right, where you've got these regional bodies, and people recognize the importance of them, but aren't supporting them with what they need, like paying for your membership fee, so you can come up with holistic solutions, which are more encompassing when you look at how do you solve for challenges within a region. Closer to home, though, what we are starting to do, and Honorable Deputy Minister touched on it, is seeing how we can work with the various spheres of government. An example given was the Northern Cape Human Settlements Project, which DBSA front-loaded. On the healthcare side, we're speaking currently with KZN to see how we can replicate what was done at Inkosi Albert Lutuli to come up with a similar triple P initiative for a tertiary hospital in northern KZN. If one looks at our balance sheet, we still very much primarily bank public sector. That's true for South Africa, and it's certainly also true for across the continent, where most of our clients are ministries of finance. But we're finding that the fiscus is definitely overburdened, and this creates an opportunity for the private sector to step in. So we work very closely with other state-owned entities. For example, I'm talking very closely to Transnet Property Company, which isn't as well known as Transnet Freight and Rail. They have about 7,000 vacant land as well as buildings. And so it's to have a conversation around how do you optimize that infrastructure, either for affordable housing or special economic zones, water and sanitation projects. We received a lot of interest from the private sector, Honorable Deputy Minister, when you issued your RFPs for your own assets. So again, it's how do we work with government, who is a significant landowner, an infrastructure owner, where again, when one talks about transformation in South Africa and you've got black participants, you can leverage off these government assets, these state-owned assets, as proxy for equity, which as banks we're always looking for. And how do you come up with these triple P initiatives to still deliver on that infrastructure? And like you said, it's not just the schools, it's the outcomes. You know, are the pass rates coming through? Are we overcoming disease burdens?
No, thank you very much, Palesa. And thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to yourselves as the audience. I hope you have been sufficiently entertained, educated about the challenges that we face, which are very serious, but more importantly, that it's opened up your minds about the possibilities. That you can see that, you know, with every challenge comes an opportunity. And what we need to do, as the minister said, is to really get up and say these are opportunities that will assist us to meet our challenges, and that's where the rubber hits the road. So enjoy the rest of the conference, cut those deals, but make sure that you invest in social infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you.